Are you aware of any government in Canada, municipal or provincial or federal, who said that people who have big houses and big yards and a nice car to ride around in should really stay home during COVID, but that they were going to make some allowances for people who were cooped up in small apartments? Quite often people without a lot of money. And organize some way for them to get outside and get the exercise that they needed to stay healthy to fight COVID. Did anybody do that? Not that I know of. From the beginning, when the Liberal government decided that they were going to borrow, in the beginning it was 10, then it was $30 billion to stimulate the economy. From the very beginning, they borrowed all that money, but they didn't have enough somehow to pay the Auditor General to keep track of what they were spending the money on. And that's just gotten worse over the last couple of years as they've spent $500 billion fighting COVID. When the original COVID package was announced, they tried to sneak it past Parliament so that they could give themselves total control over the totalitarian control over the federal budget. And they prorogued Parliament so that we didn't have anybody there that would challenge them on the way that they were planning to spend the money. And since then, they have not paid the Auditor General enough to know where the money went. So there's a few things that we do know. We do know that they fully intended to discriminate against people on the basis of sex. I don't know how you would, why you would bother to do this, or even how you'd do it. Make sure that the money that was leaving the government for private contractors would go to companies that were, I guess, owned and run by women. But what about a company that was owned by women but run by men, or owned by men but run by women, or was, four guys and a donkey, or whatever? What were they doing spending money even researching that question? But we know that they did. And so they spent $500 billion, and a lot of money went to just paying regular federal government salaries. I don't think that any of those people got laid off. Government is, most people who work for the government with those secure jobs and nice pensions and all that are female. So that was a big chunk of money went to women before the contract thing that was going to them anyway. And the Auditor General, this isn't a joke, and the parliamentary budget, Yves Giraud or whatever his name, has said, yeah, we don't know how they've been spending this money for the last few years. And we know that despite the fact that Canada's GDP has fallen, a lot of people in Canada have more money after the COVID problem than before. So that means that a lot of really wealthy people made a lot of money over this period of COVID without doing anything. So, this whole idea, we're going to help the working class and those working hard to join it, yeah, that was bullshit. They gave money out to people who had lost jobs, I think, they gave too much. Created dependency. It's so bad now that they're giving out so much money that employers can't find anybody to come back to work. So I'm going to try to go through all of the things that I think might persuade a person not to vote for Justin and his party this election. And but I'm making notes too on other things. Okay, yeah, this is such an interesting thing. Uh, People will give up freedom in times of crisis to protect themselves and protect their community, and I guess their country. I don't know that, Canada has no core identity and all that kind of thing. I don't know how much people are willing to sacrifice for the country. We don't really like the idea of countries anymore, right? Um, but they people think about the larger group, and they'll say, "Okay, I'll get the vaccine." Uh, Personal opinion: people who won't get the vaccine are selfish as hell. That's my personal opinion. Would I mandate it? Yes, I'd mandate it. I think the people that have concerns just don't want to give any government more power to monitor and more power to tell people what to do. And that is the biggest issue. So this is strange because as the election approaches, they're going to brag that they brought a mandate to federal government workers and industries that are overseen by the government. So that's banks and things like that, insurance companies probably. And that's the one mandate that, in my opinion, makes sense. I would give them the power to do that. I think they should have the power to do that. But it does make you think. Can you think of another public health issue in Canada that might be remedied somewhat by more government control, more authoritarian controls, more criminal charges? I don't know that people are getting criminal charges because of COVID. I don't think so. But yeah, people are getting fined, I guess so. So is there another public health crisis in Canada that might be alleviated by more authoritarian control, more cops on the street busting people for stuff? Is there anything you can think of? The one that comes to my mind is drugs. The argument is that you're being selfish if you don't get the vaccine, and so your behavior needs to be controlled. They have to give you the vaccine. And I guess there's people think of drugs as being somehow a victimless crime. That's for cocaine and heroin, I guess. The drugs that are still legal, not marijuana, of course. But of course, if there's no victim, there's no crime. And drug addiction is a horrible scourge. For sure, more people died of heroin overdoses. For sure, there was more dysfunction on the street and all the rest of it. And what they've done over the last few years is gone with the harm reduction model that's done nothing much but harm people. It's easy to buy cocaine and especially heroin in Canada. And it doesn't occur to anybody, to just say, look, if you're selling cocaine or heroin on the street, $10, it's shot, and you're seducing people into this lifestyle, yeah, you're going to get busted, and you're going to spend some time in a mandatory drug rehabilitation place. We're just going to catch you, and we're going to put you in a place where you have to go through a withdrawal. So, there's human rights will say, well, that person should have the freedom to do drugs, and it's a violation of their freedom to put them in penitentiary and all of that. But owing to the fact that this is a public health menace, bigger than COVID, why can't we just agree that, you're going to have to sacrifice some of your liberties if you want to have a stronger society? And so, we're just going to bust you if you do that. And what they could do, I've been saying this for 5 or 6 years, or 10 years maybe, is really bust the people who operate outside of the system. What they have to do is they have to make sure that they can identify the people that are real addicts, provide them with heroin or a substitute, and basically with the goal of slowly weaning them down. But if you're just doing drugs like that just for fun occasionally, no, you're going to get busted. And it doesn't have to be torturous or anything, but you know, you're not going to get away with using heroin recreationally. And anybody that sells it that isn't the government, I don't know if they should sell it or give it away. Probably should sell it. You don't want to make things too easy for people. Yeah, and if you operate outside of that system, you're really going to get busted. Okay, so it leads to some other interesting questions too. When was the last time that you heard of a CCP fentanyl dealer getting busted in Canada? They're going to murder one of our Canadian drug dealers. He was a drug dealer. He was a dope smuggler, big time. They're going to kill him. When was the last time we even arrested anybody on that? I'm talking about a person with dual citizenship, Chinese Canadian dual citizenship, busted for importing, let's say, fentanyl into Canada. When was the last bust? I don't know. China makes a lot of money selling heroin in Canada. They use the money to, it jacks up the price of real estate, destroys the society. It's one of the ways that they are attempting, and they'll admit this occasionally, unrestricted warfare, I think they call it. They'll just do anything that they can to destroy the West because they have ideological differences and they want to take over the West, and they're sadistic and really the most rotten, evil people in Canada. And we allow them to immigrate into Canada. I'm not saying that every person from China is like that, because a lot of them coming, actually they absolutely hate that and they don't want to see it follow them into Canada. But if it can be demonstrated that they're working on the part of the Chinese Communist Party inside Canada, we can't do anything, because if we do, they'll retaliate. They'll put another couple of people in prison. And we should at least admit, you know, where we are. Yeah, it's so ridiculous. Okay, that's enough for today, I guess.